Good. I see our guests. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. All right, thank you for joining us. I think that I can see that our two guests are connected. And I'm assuming that they've also been tested and that we're ready to go. Can you confirm in the booth that we're ready to go for that briefing? Yes, excellent. Very good. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. Welcome, everyone. We're very pleased today to be joined by two of our colleagues. We have Jean-Pierre Lacroix, who is the Undersecretary General for Peace Operations. We also have Bruno Lemarquis, who is the Deputy Special Representative to our peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, MONUSCO. He's also the resident coordinator and the coordinator for humanitarian affairs there, for humanitarian operations. He is joining us from Kinshasa. Mr. Lacroix is joining us from Damascus, where he is on another trip that we told you about a few days ago. So let me, without further ado, I believe that I have to give the floor first to Mr. Lacroix.
All right. Thank you very much, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I cannot see the room, and therefore,
No?
That could be a problem.
Hold on, Jean-Pierre.
I
think our colleagues will be able to fix that. So hopefully, you should be able to see the room and us. Let's see if this is. Yeah, they will fix it, so you will be able to see us. Yeah, but you can go ahead. We can see.
Yeah, right. Thank you. I mean, otherwise you could tell us, who is asking the question, and then of course, I'm sure Bruno and I will be happy to answer. But anyway, so this is obviously a situation in Goma and the region around Goma, which is very, very fluid. Bruno Lemarquis is joining in this briefing, and I'm sure he will have the latest on the ground. But this is a very fast evolving situation, and there are a number of things that are difficult to assess at this stage. So I want to make it very clear at the outset. Our colleagues in Goma have been forced to seek shelter. I mean, the colleagues with whom we are interacting have had to seek shelter during a couple of hours, if I understand correctly, and then of course that has also limited their ability to have maybe the full level of information that they would have gotten if they had not been sheltering, together with, of course, more challenges in terms of communicating. So what I can tell you, basically, the situation on the ground obviously remains volatile and dangerous. It's clear, and you know this probably, that there has been significant advances in favor of M23 and around these defense forces, and that it's to a large extent, I mean, it's a shift in the balance of forces. However, there continue to be fighting and clashes involving FRDC element as well as armed groups that are supporting the FRDC, the so-called Now, I will also recall that the M23 expansion in North Kivu and South Kivu, including the recent seizure of Minova and then Sake, and now the advance into Goma. All of this has a devastating toll on the civilian population, and of course Bruno will elaborate certainly on the impact on the civilian population in a region that is already massively affected and where the humanitarian challenges are daunting, and certainly the risk of a broader humanitarian disaster are very high. And of course, we also want to avoid risk of a broader war. Now, UN peacekeepers remain in their position in the field. As you know, unfortunately, we've had 3 peacekeepers killed, 1 from Uruguay and 2 from the Republic of South Africa. And I want again to express my deepest condolences to the government of Uruguay, the government of Republic of South Africa, and of course the family of our peacekeeper who have been killed. And in addition to that, 12 other peacekeepers have been injured. They're currently receiving treatment. You would know also that the SADC regional force, the SAMI-DRC, has also taken fatalities and casualties. And of course, we mourn all the civilian losses. So now, and given this situation, and really at this critical juncture, the onus now is really about bringing about an immediate cessation of hostilities. You know, with the fate of millions of civilians living in Goma being the priority, along, of course, with the safety and security of our UN personnel.
Lazarovich himself was deported to Dachau. But in 1945, after the war, Lazarovich returned to Hedges, where the village joyfully welcomed him. He rushed to discover the fate of his home.
Evelyn, I think we see that you should, thank you so much.
Object had remained intact, and also in that was a Passover.
Can we please ask those who are connected on Zoom to mute themselves? Thank you. Okay, Jean-Pierre, sorry about that. You can go ahead.
That's okay. Okay. So I was saying that at this critical juncture, now the onus really is and has to be about bringing about an immediate cessation of hostilities. The fate of the millions of civilians living in Goma or having been displaced is really the priority, along with the safety and security of UN personnel. The mission has begun temporarily relocating its personnel and their dependents from Goma over the weekend by air and road. The process is ongoing, with relocations continuing as I speak. Obviously, the safety and security of our personnel is and must be paramount. But parallel to that, of course, our colleagues from MONUSCO continue to deliver on their obligation to protect civilians to the best of their ability, and that include disarmed combatants in conformity with international humanitarian law. And there are significant numbers of civilian and also disarmed combatants that are currently in various MONUSCO premises. Now, lastly, the UN remains fully committed to supporting ongoing regional peace initiatives and continues to engage with all relevant stakeholders to bring the parties back to the negotiating table. In this regard, we welcome the Eastern African Community announcement to hold a summit by the 28th of January, and we also look forward to the African Union Peace and Security Council session scheduled for tomorrow. And following yesterday's session, we count on the Security Council to remain engaged in efforts to bring an end to this crisis. So this is all what I wanted to tell you, and I'll hand over back to you. And I believe Bruno will take over. Thank you very much.
There's a lot of questions in the room, but we also have Bruno Lemarquis, who is waiting to make a few remarks as opening statement. Bruno, please, you have the floor. And then we'll go to questions, obviously.
Merci beaucoup, Stéphanie. So first to say that what is unfolding in Goma is coming on top of what is already one of the most protracted, complex, serious humanitarian crises on Earth, with close to 6.5 million displaced people in the country, including close to 3 million displaced people in North Kivu. So over one third of the population of North Kivu is already displaced, and now this Goma crisis is unfolding. So the humanitarian situation in and around Goma is extremely, extremely worrying, with new threshold of violence and suffering reached today as active zones of combat have spread to all quarters of the city, all the neighborhoods of the city. Civilians are taking the brunt of the escalating hostilities. This morning, heavy artillery fire was directed at the city center. For example, several shells struck the Charité Maternity Hospital in central Goma, killing and injuring civilians, including newborn and pregnant women. The scenes reported by our colleague on the ground are chaotic. hundreds of thousands of people are attempting to flee the violence, including, because Goma is a city of around 1 million people, and on top of that, there were already 700,000 internally displaced people in the surrounding of Goma living in dire conditions on the outskirts of Goma. So those displaced people are again on the move. As of last Friday, 300,000 of those internally displaced had totally moved towards Goma, and the IDP the internally displaced sites were totally emptied. So, but they have no choices. They have to flee the violence. Hospitals in Goma are overwhelmed in spite of the support provided, for example, by MSF and ICRC. They are struggling to manage the influx of wounded people. For example, the Ndosho General Hospital, the main hospital for this kind of treatment, one of the main city's healthcare facility, is far exceeding its capacity. As of 3 days ago, it was treating 259 patients, including 90 civilians, with only 146 beds. And today alone, the ICRC reported an additional 117 additional injured individual with needing critical treatment. Basic services in Goma is becoming critical. They have been severely disrupted, water and electricity. They are compromised, and internet services is being cut. Yeah? It was cut today, for example, at 1 p.m. Phone networks remain operational, but it's patchy and it's not helping the humanitarian response and coordination. As Jean-Pierre has said, non-essential personnel have been relocated outside of Goma to reduce risk, but critical humanitarian staff remain in Goma working under very difficult conditions to deliver life-saving assistance. We've noted looting of humanitarian facility and heavy artillery fire, including damage to Save the Children facilities, as well as a UNHCR vehicle targeted by gunfire, fortunately without casualties. While our shared objective is to end hostilities on behalf of the humanitarian community, I call on all parties to agree on temporary humanitarian pauses in the most affected areas and establish humanitarian corridors to ensure humanitarian activities resume at scale, and more importantly, also to facilitate the safe evacuation of wounded individuals and civilians trapped in combat zones. In this context, it's also critical for all parties to restore the necessary conditions for the safe reopening of Goma Airport, and also to keep the borders open between Rwanda and the DRC in Goma operational, in order to enable individuals fleeing the violence to seek refuge away from combat zones. Despite these immense challenges, the humanitarian community remains committed to provide life-saving assistance. And yesterday we had the good news, the announcement by the Emergency Relief Coordinator of a 17 million allocation from the Central Emergency Response Fund, and this will support these efforts. To end, I urge the international community to intensify its engagement to prevent bloodshed and to support the humanitarian response. We must act now to prevent further loss of life and alleviate the suffering of the people of Goma. I thank you.
Go to questions, and I understand they may not be able to see the room yet, so please identify yourself. So let me start with Edie, and then I will go around the room.
Thank you both very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association, Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. M23 has said that it controls Goma. Is the UN able to confirm that? Because certainly from what Bruno said, there's still significant fighting going on in the city. And secondly, on evacuating UN personnel from Goma, how are you doing it if the airport is closed?
Thank you. I'm assuming, Bruno, do you want to take that question first, or should we start with Jean-Pierre?
Well, I can give the latest from the ground. It's fighting is still very much ongoing. It's very, very fluid. It's not over yet. So there are many dynamics in town. So it's a very, very fluid situation. It's a very dangerous situation. As Jean-Pierre has said, I think our colleagues many of our colleagues in MONUSCO, they had to go in underground bunkers. They have to deal with very complex situation because we had to host a lot of people fleeing for their life, so they are inside our bases. So it's still a very active situation. On the reduction of the footprint of our staff of the UN, I will not give much details, but just to say that we have taken both our international personnel and national personnel and their dependent to two locations, one in country, Kinshasa, and the other one in Entebbe, where we have the large UN base. So that's where they are sent to. Over.
Thank you. Jean-Pierre, did you want to add something?
No additional comment. I mean, I think obviously on the one hand, as I was saying, I mean, there has been significant advances by M23. On the other hand, as Bruno was saying, I mean, there's significant fighting going on in Goma, and therefore very fluid and still very volatile and increasingly dangerous in terms of the impact on the already very much affected civilian population. Back to you.
Thank you. Let me go to Sherwin, then I think Michelle Amélie.
Under Secretary General Lacroix, Sherwin Bryce, South African Broadcasting. Yesterday, the DRC foreign minister spoke to us at the stakeout after the emergency session. She asked this question: how is it that Rwanda, one of the largest troop contributing countries, gets away with killing peacekeepers? She asked what standards are applied when the UN engages in partnerships with TCCs, and how does it hold its partners accountable? I think you're the best person to answer that question, so I put it to you. And in addition to that, how does this escalation impact the phased withdrawal of MONUSCO from the DRC? Thank you.
Right. So, first of all, I mean, as you have seen in the recent statement of the Secretary General, not to mention, of course, the Security Council, there has been a call on the Rwanda's defense forces to cease support to the M23 and withdraw from the DRC territory. Now, in terms of the question you ask regarding troop contributing countries and the status of that particular country as a TCC, I think, you know, right now we have to focus on what is the immediate objective, you know, which is to bring about a cessation of these hostilities in Goma and to protect lives. So this is what we're focusing. So one step at a time. We obviously are calling on all parties, and that would certainly include Rwanda, an important TCCs, to respect the safety and security of our peacekeepers. In terms of the second question, which is the process of gradual withdrawing of MONUSCO, you would remember that in the disengagement plan that was agreed with the authorities in the DRC in November 2023, there was a provision that was to the effect that the first province where there would be such a disengagement would be South Kivu, from which MONUSCO disengaged, completed the disengagement by June 30th, 2024. Now, the next phase were not specifically determined because what was agreed was that there would be discussion between the authorities in the DRC and the UN and MONUSCO to determine these next phases. These consultations had started. took a bit of a time because you would remember there were elections in the DRC, and then they had to form a government. And of course, the government in the first month was very busy, basically in dealing with the immediate urgency of, after forming after the formation of that government. But these discussions have been ongoing. And now, of course, you're asking me about the impact of what is happening in Goma on this process. Obviously, there would be a significant impact, but there's no way I can tell you more at this stage because, frankly, we have to see how the situation will evolve and what a possible end state could be in terms of the Goma Sake situation. What I can tell you, though, is that in this context, as I indicated in my briefing, the importance of resumption of diplomatic initiatives and diplomatic processes is absolutely critical. That is in that spirit in which I referred to the upcoming, or at least the announced, summit of the Eastern African communities together with the meeting of the AU Peace and Security Council. So all hands have to be on deck as well in terms of pushing for resumption of diplomatic process.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. Thank you for the briefing. First of all, Mr. Lacroix, a couple of questions for you. What have UN peacekeepers seen any Rwandan troops on the ground in Goma? If so, what kind of numbers are they seeing them in? And my colleagues tell me there have been some reports that some MONUSCO troops have ended up on the Rwandan side of the border. Do you know anything about that? And then a question for both of you. Why do you think M23, as the UN says, with the backing of Rwanda, has decided to do this now? Is there some kind of bigger global moment that they might be taking advantage of?
Thank you very much. Well, I think there's no question that there are Rwandan troops in Goma supporting the M23. Of course, it's difficult to tell exactly what the numbers are. You've seen some estimates, or if they're very significant, 3,000, 4,000, but there is no question about that. And you will have seen the statement again that I referred to by the Security Council, by the Secretary General. Now, in terms of your second question regarding MONUSCO troops in Rwanda, not at all. I mean, that is not the case. And then maybe I'll defer to Bruno for the next question.
Well, of course, I cannot speculate as to why they are doing that now. I think the question would be best addressed not to us. Thank you.
Go to Guy, then I will go to the back online and then come back to the room. Amélie.
Thanks. Amélie Bottelier from AFP News Agency. My question is for USG Lacroix. A few days ago, MONUSCO said that their elite forces, quick response forces, were engaged in intense fighting alongside the Congolese forces against the M23. But there have been reports during the weekend that this part of the MONUSCO have withdrawn, and that MONUSCO is only doing protecting civilian right now. So can you tell us exactly what are the MONUSCO troops doing right now on the ground, and if they are involved in the fightings going on in Goma right now? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for this question. MONUSCO is acting based on its mandate and has always been doing so. The mandate is about protection of civilians and countering all the armed groups that are operating in Eastern DRC, in the two provinces where we still are mandated. And this is a very coherent mandate because the activities of these armed groups, whoever and wherever they are massively impacting negatively, of course, the civilian population. And this is in the spirit that the MONUSCO forces have been engaging in trying to counter the M23 offensive, which has been condemned by the Security Council in the recent statement of that body, as well as the Secretary General. Now, having said this, we are now seeing an evolution in the in the dynamic in Goma. On the one hand, yes, there continues to be fighting, as was said by Bruno, but then on the other hand, there has been also significant advances by M23 and RDF, and this is a very significant force, both in terms of the numbers, to the extent that we can assess them, but also in terms of the equipment. I would recall in particular that, in addition to the weapons that are being used, military grade and heavy weapons are being used, we've seen also the use of jamming and spoofing, activities which are extremely dangerous, including to MONUSCO air movement. So MONUSCO has to take this into account, has to focus on what it can do given the evolving dynamic on the ground. And what it can do is, on the number one, protect UN personnel and UN premises, and number two, protect those civilians that can be protected. And we're talking mostly about those civilian and non-combatant that are currently seeking and having and seeking shelter and actually sheltering in various MONUSCO compounds in and around Goma. There are many of them, civilians, disarmed combatants, which whom we have the duty to protect according to national humanitarian law, that is putting a very significant pressure on our colleagues in an environment where the fighting continues to impact the activities of our peacekeepers. And I mentioned that many of our colleagues had to shelter for a number of hours today. There has been impact on various MONUSCO premises as a result of the fighting. I don't have the full picture and the full details, but that is giving you a sense of what MONUSCO is focusing on, given the evolving dynamic and the responsibility it has towards civilian and UN personnel. Thank you.
Maggie?
Thank you. It's Margaret Bashir, Voice of America. Mr. Lacroix, a couple of follow-ups. Could you, in addition to calling for Rwanda to stop killing peacekeepers, yesterday the foreign minister of DRC also said that Rwanda should be banned from participating as a troop contributing country. Is that something that you would consider? You do it to some degree related to sexual exploitation. So would you consider it in cases where TCCs are killing other TCCs? And also, the Rwandan ambassador accused MONUSCO of participating essentially in trying to achieve regime change in Rwanda. What is your response to that? And who have you spoken to in Rwanda?
MONUSCO has a mandate, and the mandate is very clear. It is supported by the Security Council. Yesterday, you would have seen a statement by the members of the Council, all of them expressing very strong support to MONUSCO and to what the peacekeepers are doing under very, very severe conditions. So that is really what I can tell you. And of course, there is no other purpose, no other activities than those that are necessary for the implementation of the mandate by MONUSCO. Now, again, in terms of the first question, of course, all member states and all TCCs certainly, and in particular, I believe important TCCs have a responsibility to protect the safety and security of peacekeepers. This is a message which I believe needs to be repeated, and But like I said, at this moment, we have to focus on the emergency which we have to deal with, saving as many lives as possible and trying to bring about a cessation of hostility in Congo.
And I'll come back.
Banja Damilala, Pass Blue. This is follow-up to some of the Rwandan questions that you've gotten. Are there specific steps being considered to address Rwandan TCC status? Is the peacekeeping department in conversation with AU regarding this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have to really, in response to that question, only repeat, what I've told, what I've said in response to the previous question. I don't have anything to add for now. Thank you.
Come back to the room. I want to give the floor first to Carrie Newton from RFI, and Carrie will ask a question in French. You can answer in French, and then, if possible, just quickly summarize as well in English. Carrie, go ahead.
Merci beaucoup Stéphanie. Messieurs Lacroix, messieurs Lemarquis, bonjour. J'ai 3 questions en fait en français. Alors une première déjà pour monsieur Lacroix. Ça va être beaucoup de répéter ce que vous venez de dire, mais c'est vraiment pour qu'on ait les réponses en français. Comment les soldats de la MONUSCO sont-ils impliqués sur le terrain en ce moment, ces heures-ci? Comment peuvent-ils soutenir les soldats congolais dans ces heures où vous avez dit la dynamique est encore très fluide à Goma? Ma deuxième question, elle est aussi pour vous. Comment l'ONU est-elle impliquée dans le dialogue diplomatique entre la RDC et le Rwanda? Est-ce que vous pouvez un petit peu nous détailler toutes les implications, tous les coups de fil que vous avez eus avec les dirigeants de ces 2 pays? Et puis une troisième question pour monsieur Lemarquis. Combien de personnel de la MONUSCO est sur place actuellement? Où sont-ils? Quand pensez-vous pouvoir les évacuer puisque l'aéroport est fermé? Merci beaucoup.
Alors, la première question, c'est-à-dire ce que les priorités sur lesquelles se focalisent les collègues de la MONUSCO et en particulier la composante militaire, eh bien, il s'agit, compte tenu de l'évolution sur le terrain, des dynamiques qui ont changé avec des avances significatives du M23 soutenu par les forces de défense rwandaises, même s'il continue d'y avoir des affrontements significatifs à Goma. La priorité ou les priorités sont d'abord de protéger nos collègues des Nations Unies. Je vous rappelle, y compris les actions consistant à faciliter la relocalisation de très nombreux personnels internationaux et nationaux. Protéger également les différentes installations, les enceintes des Nations Unies, ce qui est important à un double titre. D'abord parce que c'est notre devoir également, ça fait partie de notre mandat, mais aussi parce qu'il y a de très très nombreuses personnes qui ont trouvé refuge dans les différentes installations, les différentes enceintes de la MONUSCO. Je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, à la fois des civils, mais aussi des combattants des armées. Nous avons, en conformité avec le droit international humanitaire, la responsabilité de protéger ces personnes. Et cela fait peser sur la MONUSCO, sur nos collègues, une très forte pression. Peut-être sur la seconde question, les efforts diplomatiques. Nous avons toujours été en contact avec le Rwanda, la République démocratique du Congo, les autres pays et partenaires impliqués, y compris ceux qui sont mis en avant avec beaucoup d'énergie et de détermination dans le soutien aux efforts diplomatiques. Et bien sûr, nous continuons à le faire. Je dirais que c'est d'autant plus important que, comme je le disais tout à l'heure, il est essentiel de parvenir à une cessation des hostilités, à éviter des pertes de vies humaines additionnelles dans un contexte déjà très très détérioré et un contexte qui est rappelé par Bruno Lemarquis. Autrement, oui, l'engagement des Nations Unies dans le sport diplomatique se suit très, très activement.
Let's go to
Voilà,
Bruno.
par rapport à la troisième question.
Yep. Allez-y.
Donc, le personnel civil des Nations Unies est composé donc du personnel civil de la MONUSCO et également du personnel civil des agences, fonds et programmes des Nations Unies qui opèrent à Goma. Donc, nous sommes en train de réduire notre empreinte sur terrain en réduisant le nombre de staff qui n'est pas absolument critique, dont les fonctions peuvent être conduites d'ailleurs qu'à Goma, pour ne garder que le personnel absolument critique pour des activités telles que, du côté de la MONUSCO, par exemple, l'appui à la force militaire, à la composante militaire, la protection des civils et également tout ce qui est l'assistance humanitaire pour sauver des vies. Merci.
Ça représente combien de personnes, monsieur Lemarquis, tout ça?
Bon, je ne vais pas partager les chiffres ici. Nous réduisons très significativement notre présence à Goma pour ne garder que les gens dont on a absolument besoin dans cette période difficile.
Oui, mais on a besoin d'avoir une idée de combien vous estimez qui est vraiment personnel critique. Est-ce que c'est 15% de la MONUSCO? Est-ce que c'est 10% de la MONUSCO? Est-ce que c'est plus?
Alors, je ne parle pas de MONUSCO, je parle de tout le personnel civil des Nations Unies. Donc, je vais donner deux chiffres. Nous avions 1700 civils au total. Voilà. Et je ne sais pas à la fin combien on va garder de personnes, puisque en fonction de l'évolution de la situation et de l'élévation du niveau du risque, ce qui est en train de se passer actuellement, on redéfinit petit à petit ce qu'on appelle une fonction absolument critique.
Et est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire où est-ce qu'ils sont en ce moment? Parce que je pense que monsieur Lacroix l'a dit en anglais tout à l'heure, qu'ils étaient à la fois sur une base et à la fois à Kinshasa. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous donner des détails en français, s'il vous plaît?
Alors, le personnel, pour l'instant, est amené, en tout cas, il est canalisé par la base à Entebbe, donc en Ouganda, qui est la base opérationnelle des Nations Unies. Et une partie du personnel également est amené à Kinshasa.
Merci beaucoup.
That these questions, so the first questions was one that had been asked in English about what is MONUSCO actually doing right now. So that question had been answered in English. Second one that Mr. Lacroix answered was about diplomatic dialogue. And the third one was about personnel and what is happening to UN personnel. Maybe, Bruno, if you can just quickly summarize that answer that you gave in French and English for the benefit of everyone. We unfortunately didn't manage to have interpretation. So if you can just summarize that in English briefly.
So we are currently in the process of reducing the number of UN civilian personnel, both from MONUSCO and UN agencies. So we are moving out of the country non-essential personnel. We keep personnel working on critical tasks such as operational support to the force, the MONUSCO force, protection of civilians, and the provision of humanitarian assistance. Those personnel are brought to Entebbe or through Entebbe in Uganda, which is a large UN operational base, and to Kinshasa, the DRC capital.
Thank you. Let me come back to the room. Stefano had a question. Iftikhar, after.
Yes, for Monsieur Lacroix. What do you expect the Security Council to do now that it still hasn't done it?
Thank you very much. Well, obviously, the Security Council involvement in this very critical situation is important. Is very important, and it is not for me to dictate or to to prescribe to the Council what it needs to do. But what I can tell you is that a continuous engagement of the Security Council at this particular moment is really important, because there needs to be very, very significant efforts, including by the Security Council, so that there be an end to the current fighting, and again, so that lives can be saved. There has been already too many losses of life and too much by way of disastrous humanitarian impact.
Car?
Thank you, Mr. Lacroix. Iftikhar Ali from Associated Press of Pakistan. Do you agree with the view, and it was expressed in the Security Council yesterday, that withdrawal of UN peacekeepers from South Kivu was a bad idea?
Thank you very much. Since you are asking a question as a national from a true contributing country, and an important one, and one that is contributing troops to MONUSCO, I want to say that we really admire the resilience, the fortitude, the determination and commitment of our peacekeepers, the men and women who are serving at MONUSCO. And I want to extend these expressions of gratitude to the true contributing countries. It's very challenging for our peacekeepers, and of course it is very challenging for our true contributing countries. And I really thank them for their support. I've been in touch with several ambassadors from true contributing countries. We've been discussing issues, including issues having to do with the current situation. And of course, we're doing our best to make sure that peacekeepers are protected. They are, in turn, doing their best to continue doing what is possible and necessary at this time, including, as I indicated, protecting many civilians, particularly those who are currently seeking shelter in the various bases and camps of MONUSCO. Now, in terms of the issue of South Kivu, the disengagement from South Kivu, as I indicated earlier, was provided for in the disengagement plan that was agreed between the government of the DRC and MONUSCO. And therefore, we basically proceeded on that basis. It was the result of very detailed and substantial discussion with the authorities of the DRC at that time. And of course, we look forward to South Kivu resisting the impact or not being affected by what is currently happening in North Kivu. It is, and it was always very important to make sure that there would be redeployment of state capacities of the DRC, the security forces, the armed forces, and the civilian element of the state in South Kivu, as we had done in many other provinces, because I would recall that MONUSCO used to be present in many more provinces in the DRC. It withdrew gradually from those provinces, and currently most of these provinces are actually in much better shape. I mean, and not facing a significantly challenging security situation. Now, in the case of South Kivu, it is neighboring the province of Kivu, which is currently affected by this evolution. I think it's critically important that there should be no spillover, and this is why it is, I repeat, critically important to bring about cessation of hostility in and around Goma and Sake. Thank you. And in the whole of North Kivu.
And I will take one final question online from Abdel Hamid. Then we will wrap up.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the briefers. My name is Abdel Hamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. I was wondering about the role, if any, of the African Union. Normally they have a council of elders who rush to mediate when there is conflict. Is the African Union playing any mediation role in the conflict in Goma? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, African Union is obviously a very, very important partner and in all peace efforts. And we believe that the recent announcement of an upcoming meeting of the AU Peace and Security Council is very important. We look forward to further engagement by the African Union in the efforts that are currently being made with a view to bringing about a cessation of hostilities. So we count on the AU's involvement in those efforts. We need, as I was indicated, all hands on deck to support these diplomatic efforts.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our two guests. Thank you, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the Undersecretary General for Peace Operations, and thank you, Bruno Lemarquis, who is the Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General to the Peacekeeping Mission in the DRC, Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, and we will continue to update you on the situation, I think, every day in the coming days. Thank you so much, everyone. And Stéphane is